Good day. As you can see, this says from DNA to proteins. And when we finished our notes and gone through everything, this is actually a good thing to examine. First of all, it wisely talks about DNA, reminds you about the structure. So here's a cell, here's a nucleus, and we're just getting smaller and smaller. So we have chromosomes made of DNA, DNA is the double helix, and then we get into all the tiny parts of the DNA. Then it goes on to talk about DNA replication, how the original DNA molecule unzips. Each strand provides a template to form the new strand as new nucleotides fill in. It does create the genetic code, and so that means it provides the blueprint for what cells are going to do, what kind of proteins they're going to make. And so ultimately, what it's going to talk about next as you go through, and you'll read it, I hope, in more care, is that we have sections of DNA called genes, and genes code for specific proteins to be made from amino acids. So what has to happen is, first of all, you have to make a copy of a section of DNA, and that's done by messenger RNA. Messenger RNA is small enough to fit through the nuclear membrane. That means it can leave the nucleus and get to the ribosomes in the cytoplasm. DNA is too big a molecule, it can't get out. So it's kind of handy. It keeps the DNA there in the original template form. And then the messenger RNA is able to take that genetic information from the DNA to the ribosomes. Now, once we're at the ribosomes, and here we have green structure representing a ribosome, well, we're going to have the messenger RNA is going to go through it, and the transfer RNA is going to arrive bringing amino acid. And each time we move along one series of what are called codons, we add another amino acid to our protein. So somehow we have to know when to start it, and when to stop it, and when it finishes, a protein will have been produced at the ribosome. An important thing to read in there are what are some examples of proteins and what are their functions. So this is a chart that is worth looking at and remembering. It gets talking about genes and variation. We're not too worried about that at this point because that'll be our next section when we look at traits and genetics. But 2.3 from DNA to proteins, a very useful resource to read as we go through this section.